Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's another preview and prediction video, and we're going to be going over a fourth round US Open 2024 match between Jannik Sinner and Tommy Paul. And we've paired up with Matchflow Graphics yet again to get through this as well. So we're going to go through some interesting nuggets and information for both players. Then we're going to look at their form in the last 6 to 9 to potentially 12 months. And then we will break down strategically and tactically how both players have played recently and how I think it's going to play out, and then give you guys my prediction. We'll also touch on the head to head, of course, and the players that they've played so far in the US Open. So there's quite a bit to get into because Tommy Paul is an American favorite, of course, and Yannick Sinner, after the failed drugs tests, he is now in a pretty interesting position, it has to be said, in not only his career, but also, I think, with the general public. We have some interesting things being said by not only the media, but also others as well, current players, ex players, and you do wonder how that might be playing on his mind mentally. We'll get into that a bit in detail, of course, as well. Before we do get into it, though, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Okay, so first of all, let's get into the nuggets of information. Some interesting bits. So you can see on screen, Yannick Sinner is the number one in the world right now, and that is his peak ranking. He is according to rankings anyway, the best player on the planet. In terms of Tommy Poole, he's number 14 in the world, and his peak was number 12 in the world just over a year ago. Yannick Sinner is 23 years of age, Tommy Poole 27. Tommy Poole really in the prime of his career, you would say, definitely on paper. In terms of coaches, he's got Darren Cahill and Simone Vagnozzi in his corner. Yannick Sinner. For Tommy Poole, it's Brad Stein. And then you can see on screen the win prediction prior to the match is 85%, interestingly, in favor of Yannick Sinner. That's what Matchflow Graphics have given him. And in terms of what the story of this match will be, it's a mental test for the new star. So that's Yannick Sinner, of course, being the new star. And it will be a mental test for a number of reasons. Yannick Sinner does lead the head-to-head 2-1, and they've played only once on outdoor hard, which was last year in Canada. It was a pretty close match, 2 sets in the end, so a straight set victory for Sinner, but 6-4, 6-4. And before that, they'd played on grass and also outdoor clay in 2022, and they split those matches. So not really much to talk about there, in all honesty. Let's then look at their form, and then I'll break it down tactically because there's a lot to talk about, I think, for both players, and two of the most athletic, if not the most athletic players on tour. So for Yannick Sinner, as you can see on screen, very cool graphic. You can see tournament on the far left hand side, then what the tournament is, so whether it's a Grand Slam, a Master 1000 tournament, whether it's a 500, etc. And then you can see a breakdown of each round in that tournament, who they played, and then if they won, it's a green mark and green field square or cell. And if they lost, then it's orange or red, depending on how your color sizing is. And in terms of some of the top 10 players that have been beaten, they are highlighted in purple in those green boxes. So you can see, for example, in Cincinnati, Yannick Sinner beat Andre Rublev, the number 6 seed, in the quarterfinals. And there's also for Yannick Sinner a little red dot. If you look at where Indian Wells is towards the bottom, in the round of 32 when he played Struff, after that was when he tested positive, when he had those positive results, or even. So after that, he obviously went on to win some tournaments, interestingly. So, yeah, obviously some things to look at there. Miami, Halle, and also Cincinnati. Look, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of the case and my thoughts on it just because I feel like that's probably for another video. But yeah, not a great look anyway. Obviously, not ideal. And what I will say is, my thinking is always I err on the side of optimism and will just say that I think he did not do it on purpose and it was a mistake. And I don't think there was any foul play. Um, yeah, there was no foul play, but who knows? No one really knows apart from the people in his team. Okay, let's get into this then. So you can see here, Australian Open, of course, he won. So really good, and 3 top 10 victories as well to the title. Rotterdam as well, and Miami. We don't really need to talk about those ones too much. Miami, of course, a hardcore tournament, so that's important. He made the semi-finals of Indian Wells, lost to Alcaraz, number 3 seed. That's, of course, when he tested positive. And then in Miami, he went on to win, beating Medvedev and Dimitrov, 2 top 10 players, as you can see highlighted in purple. He lost the semi-finals of Monte Carlo to Tsitsipas, number 11 seed, and then round of 16, he beat Khachanov in Madrid and then pulled out because of the hip injury. Roland Garros, he lost to Carlos Alcaraz in the semi-finals, and then in Halle, he beat Hurkacz in the final, the only top 10 player of the week on grass, and then lost to Medvedev in the quarterfinals of Wimbledon after a few decent victories against Hanfman, Berrettini, Kekmanovic, and Shelton. The Montreal and Cincinnati didn't go quite according to plan. Well, Montreal anyway, of course. Montreal, who played Chorich and Tabio, and then in the quarterfinals, he lost to Andre Rublev, but that's not an issue because he then got revenge in Cincinnati. He beat Mikkelsen, and then the quarterfinals, he played Andre Rublev, beat him, got his revenge, beat semi-finalist Alexander Zverev as well, the number 4 seed in the semis, and in the final, he beat Francis Tiafoe, who's been playing some good tennis as well. Recently beat Ben Shelton at the US Open. And the US Open, you can see actually on screen, played McDonald and Mikkelsen. And look, I mean, he's looked quite good. He's looked quite good, Jannik Sinner. I wouldn't say he's looked phenomenal, but he's been very clinical. He's got through his matches with no sweat and no real issues and fuss. The McDonald match, he did drop a set, but it was a slow set, and then he picked up his level and he got through and managed it quite well in the end. And Mikkelsen was very straightforward. For Tommy Paul, it's been a pretty decent season, I would say. A tournament winning Queens was really impressive and some deep runs. He's had a very solid year. You can see Adelaide right at the bottom there at 250. And he lost to Jack Draper in the quarterfinals. Australian Open didn't go according to plan, lost in the third round to Kekmanovic. A couple of good top 10 wins, well, 3 that I can see on screen. Delray Beach ended up beating Tiafoe in the semi-finals. And I think he pulled out the final there by the looks of it. Indian Wells beat Rude in the quarterfinals. And then also lost to Medvedev in the semi-finals. Again, no shame in that. A very, very good player, especially on a hard court, of course, Daniel Medvedev. What I will say is the Miami loss was very random. Lost to Dam 205 in the wild. I mean, it's one of the most random losses I've seen in quite a while, if I'm being honest. And yeah, I mean, it was just one of those random losses because you just wouldn't expect him to lose to someone like that. And actually, sorry, Tommy Paul won Delray Beach, lost Delray Beach, loses Taylor Fritz in the final. In terms of Madrid, Cerundolo lost to him in the round of 32. In Rome, lost to Jarry in the semi-finals, but beat Medvedev and Hurkacz, 2 top 10 players on the way to the semi-finals. So an impressive run in the end. Roland Garros lost to Cerundolo in the round of 32 or third round. That was a disappointment. I think he really underperformed there. I think he's a good clay court player. And then in Holland, in Hertogenbosch and Queens, some decent runs. Lost the quarterfinals to Korda, but beat Poprin, then Baez, Tabio, Draper, Corda, Massetti, beat all of them in his Queens run. So no top 10 wins, but it's still impressive. Wimbledon lost to Alcaraz in the quarterfinals. Managed to speak to him after that. And also, I think Alcaraz just played too well and obviously went on to win the title. In the Olympics, he also lost to Alcaraz again in the quarterfinal stage. And then in Montreal, lost to Nakashima in the second round. Cincinnati, first round, lost to Caboli. So Cincinnati and Montreal didn't go according to plan. He did play the Olympics, so there could have been a bit of a factor there from the Paris Olympics, just maybe not being able to transition particularly well from clay to hardcore in such a short span of time. And the US Open, he's played Sonego and he's also played Max Purcell. So, yeah, I think that would be good. And what I will say to you guys is Tommy Paul is one of those players who had a fantastic junior career, and there was a lot of expectation around him. I wouldn't say that he has underperformed, but what I will say is there was a thinking that he might have done better in his career than he has done so far. He's still got time, but he has a pretty good all-round game and all-court game as well. And it's just about, I think, pushing to the next level. And a win, for example, against someone like Jannik Sinner now would take him to that level, right? In terms of tactics, so there's a few things to dive into here. First of all, both players are extremely physical in terms of their style. Tommy Paul is one of the most physical players on tour. If we talk about his game, he is extremely quick across the ground, one of the most athletic players, just so quick, so quick. He's able to match Alcaraz and Sinner and others, maybe even Dimona. I mean, he's just so good at tracking down balls defensively as well, really solid. As I said, able to be not only just be quick, but have good anticipation. He's also got good offensive capabilities. It's on the forehand side. He's able to flatten it out, use different variations on that side, and the backhand's reliable for the most part. He's also got a pretty good drop shot, good transition game, and he's pretty comfortable at the net. His returning is quite natural from what I've seen, especially up close and just watching the number of matches that I have done of him. And the serve is an interesting one because he's able to ramp it up past 135 miles per hour at times. He can sometimes get a bit bogged down with, in my opinion, the kick serve on grass and hard court, which I think he overuses at times. The kick serve out wide, especially on the ad side, and I feel like it's quite a safe serve, and his serve at times can let him down. It can be a little bit inconsistent. I don't think he has the best serving days at times, and the serve is just such an important weapon and factor in matches, especially on the men's tour. When he lost to Carlos Alcaraz, I asked him, "What do you think you could have done better tactically? What could you have done to change the outcome of the match?" And he said that he needed to serve better. He said, in my service games, I just need to do better, and because he said in men's tennis, that's the most important thing, and I tend to agree. For Jannik Sinner, I think we know what his game's about, right? Very explosive, best running forehand on tour, I would say. Best forehand down the line on tour, I would say as well. The two-handed backhand is extremely reliable, very solid for the most part. He's able to also hit big from that side, cross court down the line. Same with the forehand side, of course, and very compact swing, very, very solid from the baseline. And he goes for his shots. He's not scared. He's brave. Great returner as well. And, I think with his serve, it's still something that he's working on, but it's much improved. He's hitting his spots better. He's able to ramp it up. He has a bit of variation. And also, he's added some other elements to his game, like coming forward to the net more, which I think he actually doesn't look like a duck out of water. He looks relatively natural, which is great. He's clearly been working on that a lot. The drop shot. And, there's a bit more variation, I think, to his tool bag, which is really, really important as he continues to get older and he needs to improve his game more and more as opponents start to figure him out. he needs to have these different looks and different things in his game that a player has to worry about and then has to mentally think about, and that can lead to really big gains and advantages for Yannick Sinner going forward, because he's not going to be one dimensional, and it's not particularly easy then to put together a game plan to stop him. For Tommy Paul, he also has good variation. The backhand slice as well, I didn't mention that, but that's a pretty useful tool. And, he does seem to have a bit of everything. And the issue with Tommy Paul is, does he have a few attributes that really stand out? And I could say they're elite, and I wouldn't necessarily say that. Maybe his speed and is up there. But generally speaking, I can't say so about the other factors. I think for him, one of the biggest things is shot selection. I think sometimes he's maybe not hitting the right patterns, and it ends up getting him into trouble. And I think we saw against Alcaraz, he looked a little bit underpowered at times, which wasn't great, of course, for him. And he'll have to contest against Jannik Sinner, who hits a really heavy ball. Maybe not as heavy a ball as Alcaraz, but definitely as hard a ball, if not harder, and also on a pretty quick surface of the US Open by the looks of it, and also from what people have been saying. For me, in terms of what both players need to do to win, and then I'll give you guys my prediction. I think Jannik Sinner, he needs to be very solid from the baseline. He can't let Tommy Paul dictating the points, come forward, transition lots. And I think Jannik Sinner needs to be proactive in the points. And I think that's important for both players, to be honest. But for Sinner especially, I don't think Sinner wants to be on the back foot. I think that's where it'll get dangerous if Tommy Paul starts closing the net really well. Then Jannik Sinner could be in trouble. I think also, Sinner needs to try and get Tommy Paul on those backhand to backhands, because as solid as Tommy's backhand is, Sinner hits a bigger ball on that side. And I also think he's able to find better angles and change and go line more comfortably. So I think he needs to utilize those attributes. That backhand of Sinner is going to be important. And the forehand to forehand, I think Tommy Paul could have some success, but Sinner, again, he will be brave going line. And, it's about those calculated, judgments and calculated risks. I like to call it cool. The best phrase that I always use to coin people being aggressive, but in an educated way, is saying that they're being calculated in their aggression, or calculated aggression. That is the phrase, even. So, yeah, I mean, Yannick Sinner, he needs to be good from the baseline. I think his serve as well is going to be key. Tommy Paul is very good returning wise, so if Sinner can get a few easy service games, it then puts a lot of pressure on Tommy Paul's serve, and that's important, because if Tommy Paul's always getting a look in on the Yannick serve and potentially breaks at times as well, Sinner will then have to adjust and really fight his way back into sets, and it might be a bit seesaw in terms of the momentum. But if Sinner can be solid on his serve, the momentum should stay firmly with him, and then he will get his chances on Tommy Paul's serve. I can tell you that. But Tommy Paul, he needs to be decisive, I think, with his game plan, and also with his shot selection. I think at times, as I mentioned before, he can be a bit hesitant, or it's just not the right choice. And he does have a lot of different ways to play. I think it's important that he closes down the net at every opportunity he gets. I know Sinner is a fantastic player when it comes to passing shots, but Tommy Paul's got really good hands. I think he covers the net well. He needs to be brave on the approach. And yeah, I think for me, what's really interesting against someone like Sinner is mentally, how's he going to fare with the crowd probably being pretty much pro Tommy Paul, and potentially even booing Sinner if there's some people that dislike him because of what happened with the doping situation. And then also, this is a big opportunity for Tommy Paul, because he beats Jannik Sinner. The draws opened up massively. No Djokovic, no Alcaraz. So he knows this is a big, big moment in his career. It could be a turning point. It could be a catalyst for bigger things. So important that he really comes out and plays some of his best tennis and leaves it all on the court. I think variation is also going to be key for Tommy Paul. Jannik Sinner, he's, as I said, he is powerful machine from the back of the court. If Tommy Paul just hits with the same pace and spin and shape, Sinner will just pick him off and he will hit him off the court and it'll be a quick match. The Tommy Paul can vary it up with the slice, the backhand slice, the lob at times, and well, sorry, not even just the lob, the slice, but also just more shape on the forehand, more spin, find those angles. It'll make a big difference. I think it'll definitely give Yannick Sinner something different to think about. So important for me in terms of how Tony Paul will win. I think he needs to have a really good serving day. As I said, he goes a bit safe at times. He needs to go big. He needs to be brave. Needs to hit his spots, and potentially even at times try and go into the body of Sinner. I think he's an underrated serve, and it just means Sinner is so good at latching on to first serves or second serves on both wings. He's able to hit return winners or hit really aggressive returns for the majority of the time if you don't have a massive serve. And for Tommy Paul, I think it's important that he actually goes into the body and tries to cramp Sinner at times. Just means that Sinner won't be able to get a clean swing and have room to really hit through that shot, which I think is really important. And the other thing I wanted to mention is actually angles. I think both players utilize it really well. At times, Tommy Paul could even go big down the middle. If he wants to go down the middle and try and give Sinner not a lot of angle to utilize, that's fine. But he needs to then make sure that he's committing to the shot down the middle. It's not just a pedestrian shot down the middle, because that's when Sinner then feels like he's got the opportunity to start changing direction and dictating himself. So a few different factors to really delve into and get stuck into. In terms of prediction, I think Sinner is actually looking quite good. Obviously, he missed the Olympics. I'm going to go for Sinner in 4 sets. I think Tommy Paul will cause him some trouble, but I just think the courts, form wise, the way that Sinner's been playing, and just the matchup, I think it favors Sinner, and I think he'll be able to come out on top, in my opinion. Let me know in the comment section below who you think is going to win and why, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.